Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're hanging out with us today because we're diving into something that is just absolutely vital. If you're in your 30s or 40s right now, consider this explainer your ultimate cheat code. We're going to fast forward and look at the financial journeys of folks in their 60s and 70s. By digging into tons of survey data and research, we're going to figure out exactly how we can sidestep the most common money regrets they're carrying around today.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We've got 6 main themes to get through: the myth of financial regret, the time advantage, the lifestyle trap, the work-life imbalance, family and legacy, and finally, your ultimate asset. So picture this with me for a second. Imagine you're sitting in a giant room with 1,065-year-olds. These are people who have already lived the journey we're on right now, right? They've made the big choices, weathered the economic storms, and they're living with the results. If you just flat out ask them, what do you wish you'd done differently with your money? What do you honestly think they'd say? Now, you'd probably assume they'd talk about picking a bad stock, or maybe, I don't know, mistiming the housing market, or kicking themselves for not buying Tesla early on. But actually, no way. The research shows something completely different. Their biggest regrets literally have nothing to do with day trading or mutual funds. Instead, they are entirely focused on time and life choices. It turns out, most of what we call financial regrets are really just life regrets that accidentally ended up on a balance sheet.
Section 1. The myth of financial regret.
Let's get right into this first point, because true financial regret rarely looks like a bad investment return. It's actually much sneakier. Behavioral economists have found that we human beings adapt incredibly fast to lifestyle upgrades. You know that happiness spike you get from a huge new purchase? It fades super fast, but the financial cost? That just keeps growing. I mean, think about it. The average new car today goes for around 50 grand, and people are financing these depreciating metal boxes over 72 months. That's 6 years. By the time you finally pay it off, the car is practically vintage. Constantly choosing these lifestyle upgrades quietly builds a massive brick wall between where you are right now and true financial freedom. Because every dollar you put toward upgrading your lifestyle today is a dollar that's not compounding towards your future. Section 2, the time advantage. So, across major surveys from places like Bankrate and Northwestern Mutual, the single biggest regret across the board is wishing they had started saving and investing sooner. And take Alfred and Benjamin here, they brilliantly illustrate the math of time. They're both investing $500 a month. Alfred starts at age 25, does it for just 10 years, and then completely stops. He only ever puts in 60 grand out of pocket. Now Benjamin, he waits until he's 35, but then he invests every single month for 30 straight years, putting in a total of $180,000. But assuming a historical 10% return, Alfred ends up with around $1.8 million at age 65. Meanwhile, Benjamin, who invested literally 3 times as much of his own money, ends up with $1.1 million. The big takeaway? Investing success isn't really about picking the perfect stock, it's just about having more birthdays ahead of you so compound interest can do the heavy lifting. All right, Section 3, the lifestyle trap. You know, our culture really celebrates making huge purchases, and that often blinds us to the hidden long-term traps. And there's absolutely no purchase more celebrated than the dream home. Let that $360,000 number sink in for a second. For most of us, house is the biggest financial decision we'll ever make, but we get totally hyper-focused on the monthly mortgage payment and just completely underestimate the ongoing costs. Real estate pros use a rule of thumb that maintenance alone is going to run you 1 to 4% of a home's value every single year. So if you buy a $900,000 home, a 2% maintenance cost over 20 years equals $360,000 out the door. And that's before property taxes, insurance, or HOA fees, which, let's be real, only ever seem to go in one direction, right? Up. Ironically, sinking all your cash into a massive house can rapidly delay your actual dream life because you're locking all your net worth up in walls and a roof instead of usable, flexible income. And, you know, the fear of losing money leads to another massive trap, which is being way too conservative. Lots of people panic during market downturns, like we saw in 2008 or 2020, and they just flee straight to cash, thinking, okay, I'm being safe. But the historical data tells a totally different story. If you stuck 100 grand under the mattress or in cash for 30 years at 2%, it barely even keeps up with inflation. Meanwhile, that exact same amount in a diversified stock portfolio historically grows to over $1.7 million. So fleeing to cash isn't actually eliminating your risk. You're really just trading stock market volatility for the massive invisible risk of inflation, slowly eating away your purchasing power and leaving you broke later in life. Section 4, the work-life imbalance. Okay, this is where things get super interesting because we shift away from just the math of accumulation and get into pure human psychology. Have you guys ever heard of one more year syndrome? It's a real thing.
And it's wild. Research from firms like JP Morgan shows that retirees almost always underspend compared to what their financial planners project. But the fear of running out of money is so deeply hardwired into our brains that people will just keep working for one more year to pad a spreadsheet that is never going to look perfectly safe to them. They're literally trading precious, unget-backable years of their health and life just to fund a spending level they're never actually going to reach. And the cost of working too long is just massively magnified if you're staying in a job you absolutely hate. Just look at that 80,000 figure. If you work a standard 40-hour week from age 25 to 65, that is roughly 80,000 working hours. 80,000 hours. That isn't a rounding error, that is your life. Gallup polls consistently show that a huge majority of workers are totally disengaged at work, but they stay because of the golden handcuffs. You know, a salary that's just comfortable enough to keep them trapped. The real cost there isn't financial at all. It's a massive, non-refundable chunk of your actual life sacrificed to feeling unfulfilled. Moving to Section 5, Family, Legacy, and Alignment. Let's zoom out a bit now and look at the regrets tied up in the people around us. A really common regret among older folks is helping their kids too little or just waiting way too long to do it. Traditionally, right, wealth gets passed down when someone passes away, which means the kids often inherit the money when they themselves are in their 60s. By then, their mortgage is probably paid off and their own kids are grown. But think about how much of a game changer it would be to get that financial help when you're, say, 32. Those are the messy, ridiculously expensive years. You're dealing with childcare, trying to scrape together a house down payment, drowning in student loans. Giving while you're still alive doesn't just help when it's most desperately needed. It actually lets you sit back and watch your legacy make an impact in real time. And speaking of the people we share our lives with, we've got to talk about the financial elephant in the room, divorce. From a purely financial standpoint, it is catastrophic. Suddenly, one household splits into two. You lose all your economies of scale, and you get hit with massive legal fees and having to liquidate assets. But the really crucial takeaway from the research isn't just about the messy aftermath, it's about what leads up to it. It's the slowly accumulating financial stress, the misaligned spending values, those toxic disagreements over saving that slowly chip away at the foundation of the relationship over time. It is absolutely vital to get aligned on your money habits early before that stress turns into something you just can't fix.
Finally, Section 6, the ultimate asset.
As we bring all these regrets together, a really distinct pattern emerges about what wealth actually is. Let's walk through this because it beautifully ties everything together. Look at this. Starting to invest late, the true cost is lost compounding. Buying way too much house, that's lost freedom. Working too long costs you actual years of your life. Staying in a job you hate, lost fulfillment. Helping your kids too late means lost impact. And divorce is a massive loss of both wealth and time. When you really look at these through life costs, almost none of them are actually about the money. They're about lost time, lost freedom, and lost fulfillment. It just proves, for sure, that money is strictly a tool to buy you the life you actually want to live. Look, if you're 65 today and in pretty good health, you can reasonably expect to live another 25 or 30 years. But the choices you're making right this second, in your 30s and 40s, those are the choices that will completely dictate the freedom and the joy of those final decades. So I want to leave you with a pretty deep question to chew on. What regrets would you have if you knew there were just 25 years left on the clock? Keep that in the back of your mind the next time you're faced with a major financial decision.